Elon Musk is often called the richest person alive, worth over $200 billion. But the richest person in all of history? Probably not even close. At least one medieval king crashed an entire region's economy just by passing through it. A Roman emperor personally owned Egypt. An oil tycoon controlled 90% of American refining. So who actually holds the title? That depends entirely on how you measure wealth. To find the absolute answer, our modern instinct is to pull up a calculator, adjust for inflation, and compare the numbers. But that method breaks down almost immediately. Standard inflation calculators measure the cost of a modern consumer basket, food, housing, clothing. They are designed for modern market economies, not ancient empires where most people lived on subsistence farming. This is why economists use different lenses. The first is economic share. Instead of asking what a fortune could buy, we ask, what portion of the entire economy did this person control? Controlling 2% of a nation's total economic output in the Middle Ages gave a ruler far more relative power than holding even $100 billion in a multi-trillion-dollar modern economy. Then there is the difference between private wealth and political control. In ancient states, the line between the ruler's personal bank account and the imperial treasury did not exist. An emperor did not need cash when they directly owned the gold mines, the wheat fields, and the tax revenues of conquered provinces. We also have to consider liquidity. Modern billionaires hold paper wealth tied to volatile stock markets, which can vanish during a crash. Historical wealth was often held in physical assets, millions of acres of land or metric tons of gold that could not easily be liquidated or spent without collapsing the local economy. Each of these measurement methods naturally produces a different winner. The quest for history's ultimate fortune is not about finding one perfect number, but about decoding how different systems create and define power. In 1855, a 16-year-old bookkeeper in Cleveland bought a small red-covered ledger for 10 cents. His name was John D. Rockefeller, and that notebook, Ledger A, became the blueprint for the greatest private fortune in modern history. Unlike ancient rulers whose wealth was tied to empires, Rockefeller operated within the rules of raw industrial capitalism. He did not conquer lands, he built a system. By founding Standard Oil in 1870, he focused on a single bottleneck, refining. Through secret railroad rebates, aggressive buyouts, and building his own pipelines, he eventually controlled 90% of U.S. oil refining. By 1913, his personal net worth reached $900 million, making him America's first billionaire. In today's terms, standard inflation adjustments put his estate at around $30 billion. But if we measure his fortune as a share of the American economy, about 3% of GDP at its peak, that number skyrockets to over $400 billion. Even when the Supreme Court broke Standard Oil into 33 companies in 1911, the breakup only made him richer, showing the limits of trying to break his empire. While oil fueled the nation, steel built its physical bones. Andrew Carnegie built his fortune on raw scale. By owning every step of production, from the iron ore mines to the coal fields and railroads, Carnegie Steel drove down manufacturing costs, turning a premium material into a cheap, mass-market commodity. The demand from expanding railroads and growing cities drove his steel mills to run 24 hours a day. In 1901, banker J.P. Morgan bought the entire operation for $480 million. Carnegie's personal take-home share of $225 million instantly converted massive industrial holdings into concentrated liquid cash. Measured as a share of the U.S. economy, his peak fortune equaled $310 billion today. He spent his final years giving 90% of it away, leaving an afterlife of libraries and universities that forever changed how the world remembered his wealth. 6 centuries before Carnegie sold his steel mills, an empire in West Africa operated on a completely different scale of value. The Mali Empire sat directly atop the world's most prized commodities, gold and salt. Under the ruler Mansa Musa, who came to power around 1312, Mali controlled the gold fields of Bambouk, Bure, and Galam, alongside the trans-Saharan trade routes. At its peak, this single empire supplied nearly 2/3 of the gold reaching the Mediterranean and Europe. But this wealth was not recorded in bank ledgers or corporate stocks. It lived within the trade networks themselves, taxed at every border. In 1324, this regional power exploded onto the global stage during Musa's legendary pilgrimage to Mecca. Traveling with a massive caravan, Musa distributed gold so generously in Cairo that he accidentally collapsed the local economy. Syrian scholar al-Umari recorded that the sudden injection of an estimated 10 tons of gold depressed the local market for over a decade. Historians like Ibn Khaldun later confirmed these accounts, preserving the memory of a ruler whose everyday spending could dictate international exchange rates. How do you measure a fortune that can break the monetary system of a foreign nation? Because Musa's wealth was tied to sovereign territory and natural resources rather than private bank accounts, it represents the strongest case in history for a fortune that simply cannot be quantified. Augustus Caesar bypassed the rules of private ownership entirely. In 27 BC, he consolidated the Roman state under his personal authority, blending political power with unimaginable wealth. The line between his private purse and the imperial treasury essentially disappeared. Through a system known as the fiscus, Augustus directly controlled the tax revenues of conquered provinces and the massive agricultural yields of Egypt, which he held as his personal property. He did not need to own factories. He commanded the economic machinery of an empire. He paid Rome's legions out of his own pocket, funded massive public works, and dictated trade flows across 3 continents. How do you calculate the net worth of a man who can treat a superpower as a personal asset? Economists attempting to model this level of sovereign control estimate his wealth in the trillions of dollars, with some calculations reaching over 4 trillion. These figures are not exact bank balances, but method-based estimates. They represent the ultimate limit of wealth, when an individual's personal fortune becomes indistinguishable from the economy of the state itself. Today, the names on global wealth leaderboards belong to tech founders and luxury titans like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bernard Arnault, and Bill Gates. These fortunes are highly visible, tracked in real time by stock tickers and public market valuations. Yet, this paper wealth is incredibly volatile. A sudden market correction can wipe out tens of billions of dollars in a single afternoon. More importantly, these massive numbers represent a tiny fraction of total economic output. Elon Musk's peak net worth represents less than 0.05% of US gross domestic product, proving that the modern era is merely the most measurable period of extreme wealth, rather than its highest point. If we define wealth by strict private ownership, the logic points directly to John D. Rockefeller, with Andrew Carnegie close behind. This system relies on clean financial ledgers, but it misses the raw power of sovereign rulers. If we shift to commodity dominance and control of global production, Mansa Musa takes the crown. The trade-off is data quality. His gold-rich empire operates on medieval chronicles and speculative valuations. If we prioritize political control and share of the overall economy, Augustus Caesar wins, commanding a fortune indistinguishable from Rome itself. Yet, this metric blurs personal property with state revenue. Modern billionaires lead in pure purchasing power, but their volatile paper assets make up a tiny fraction of global output. The winner changes because the system of measurement changes. The absolute peak of wealth depends entirely on the lens we choose to apply. Today, we track net worth like a sport, but history proves ultimate wealth is not currency, it is absolute control. As power shifts to digital networks, the next richest person will not just own markets, but the reality we live in. Who holds the real power today? Share your thoughts below.